Hello people, welcome back. Painting your home can be a fantastic way to refresh your space. Pretty biased because I am James from the Paint People, but I think it's true. And honestly, finding the right painter is crucial. If you're not a DIY enthusiast or you just don't want to bother, then you gotta hire someone to do it. And the thing is, a great painter can transform your home, but a bad one can really leave you with a huge headache that nobody wants to deal with. Maybe even a paint splattered mess all over your floors. Today we're giving you an awesome tool, 7 must-ask questions before you sign a contract with a painter. I've worked as a professional painter. These are questions that I've answered many times, and honestly I think it's good for both parties to be on the same page with a lot of these things. So today's sponsor is us. Paintpeople.com is your go-to destination for quality paint and paint supplies. One of our standout features is our ability to create any color from all major paint brands. And the best part, we deliver across the US and Canada. Visit our website today and discover a world of colors, quality, and convenience. And as a thank you for supporting us on YouTube, use coupon code JAMES5 for 5% off your order. Let's talk about number 1. Are you licensed and insured? This is a non-negotiable. A licensed and insured painter protects you in case of accidents to property or even people damage. Make sure to ask for proof of insurance and their license. It'll give you so much peace of mind throughout the project, especially if you have tall ceilings, people are on ladders. It can get really spooky and you don't want to be stuck in a precarious situation. Question 2, can I see references and past work? A reputable painter will be happy to provide you with references from past clients. Contact these references to get their honest opinion on the quality of their work, their communication, and their overall experience. And also to make things really easy, a lot of painters these days, they have a website, they have an Instagram. You can see what they've done, but I do think you gotta hear from the horse's mouth sometimes. Talk to a real client that worked with this painter just to give you the full picture, not just a nice doctored image on Instagram. Not to say that they were doctored, but you never know. Number 3, what does your preparation process look like? So prep is important. We know this. A thorough prep job is essential for a lasting paint job, and it also will protect your floors from looking like Jackson Pollock paintings. You don't need all the details, but find out about whether they move your furniture for you, drop cloths, wall patching, how they'll handle trim and molding, what are they gonna do about your outlet plate covers and things like that. You don't need to get all the details, but just clarify those couple things and see what the process is. Question 4, what type of paint do you use? There's a wide range of paint companies and qualities. Not only discuss the brand that the contractor prefers, but also the type of paint. And if you want, ask why they recommend that product, why they use it. And if you're really looking for something that is durable, ask about the higher quality options. While contractor grade paint can be fine for a lot of projects, maybe you want something a little more premium, but also expect the price to be impacted by that decision to go with something a little more premium. But normally I find that material cost ends up being 10-15% maybe of the total project, depending on who you ask. Question 5, can you give me a detailed quote in writing? A detailed quote should outline the scope of work, the materials that are included, the labor costs, and also the timeline for completion. This is going to protect you from hidden fees and ensures everyone is on the same page. That's really what it's all about here. Try not to rely on verbal agreements. Get things in writing. This is good for the painter as well, because then they can show you on their quotation, oh no, look here, I just said I was doing the baseboards in the bathrooms, not the powder room. Number 6, how will you handle unexpected issues? Sometimes unforeseen problems arise during a paint job. Ask how the painter will handle these situations to avoid any additional costs that might be involved. Or if there are going to be additional costs, at least you've talked about it beforehand. Sometimes when you strip a stucco ceiling, there could be something hiding underneath. You don't know. How is that going to be addressed? Is the painter going to do it, or are you responsible? Get those things covered. Question 7, what is your cleanup process? Once everything's done, what happens then? A professional painter, I think, should leave a workspace clean and tidy. Unless you've decided, hey, don't worry, I have cleaners coming in, they're gonna clean up all the dust and stuff, hopefully not paint on the floor, so you don't have to worry about it. But oftentimes that's done by the painter, as long as it's discussed, right? So just talk about how they're gonna handle paint debris, leftover materials, and furniture placement after the job is complete. Get that clarified one way or the other. And here's a bonus question that I think is very important. What are your favorite toppings? If this painter has managed to answer all these questions to your satisfaction, maybe you should reward them with a pizza one of the days they're working. I'm sure they'll appreciate it. I know I did whenever my clients bought me lunch. It's not expected, but it's definitely delicious. So by asking these key questions, you'll be well on your way to hiring a qualified painter who will deliver a beautiful and lasting paint job for your home. Level playing field, managed expectations, it's good for everybody. Feeling empowered? Have any other questions you think are important to ask a painter? Share them in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe because I love you. Channel. Today we're going to tackle a question that's been on everyone's mind. Is do-it-yourself painting really cheaper than hiring a professional painter? I'm going to break down the costs on the screen, and let's see if this DIY dream is even worth the hassle. So just to give you some background if you're new to the channel, my name is James. I work as the main content creator for the Paint People. I work as the primary color consultant, but I also worked as a professional painter, my family business, for well over a decade. I definitely have some insight when it comes to costs in the painting business. So I want to start with the DIY costs of what you will have to spend out of your own pocket to do the project yourself. When considering DIY painting, there are several costs to factor in. Obviously, the first notable one would be paint, and the quality and quantity of paint you need will vary depending on the size of your project. And if you want something that will last, you probably need to go with more premium paint. Then of course you have the equipment to apply the paint. So you'll need brushes, rollers, drop cloths, probably things like painter's tape, extension poles, trays, liners perhaps. And then for repairs, you probably need some spackling, some plaster, some caulking, and then the tools to apply all that as well. So all other supplies, like considering the cost of primer you might need, putty, and any other necessary supplies. But I think the biggest cost that people don't necessarily take into consideration is your time. Remember, DIY projects, they take time and effort. And if you're not a skilled painter, if you haven't done it regularly, it might take longer than you anticipate. And time is money, friend. It's an opportunity cost. If you're spending an entire week painting the first floor of your home, that is a week's worth of potential pay at your job that you're essentially forfeiting just so you can paint your home. Now, when it comes to professional painters, they tend to charge based on several different factors. The first one, of course, is the scope of the work, the project size. Obviously, larger projects will cost more, so the bigger the project, the more money you're probably gonna have to fork out. The second cost is the paint quality. So the painter might stick with a certain grade of paint, but if you want something a little higher quality, that cost will of course be transferred onto you, which can increase the overall price. Another thing that people charge for and account for is prep work. So the amount of prep work involved, such as patching holes or sanding surfaces, this of course will affect the price. Sometimes location is factored in. So labor costs can actually vary depending on your geographic location. And if you're set on a really reputable company that has to travel quite a distance to get to you, that also might be added into the cost as well. And sometimes speed of the work can affect the cost. You might have one company that works twice as fast as another because they have double the painters working. So keep that in mind as well. So let's compare some actual numbers when it comes to DIY versus professional painters. So let's start with a small project like a powder room. And here's the cost if you did it yourself, just the materials and the paint and all that. And just for fun, here's the average wage that someone might make in one day, which is money you could. Small project, still kind of a good deal. So for really small projects, DIY actually seems like a decent deal because oftentimes companies will have a minimum charge that they'll apply to all their projects, just so that they're not coming in to paint one door or something like that. Now things change a bit when we get to a medium-sized project. Let's say instead of a powder room, we're painting a small bachelor apartment. Here's what it might cost for a company to do it themselves versus what you would spend on materials and supplies and paint. And let's say you've painted before, but you're not a super expert. Maybe it takes you 3 days to do it. Okay, now we're getting a little interesting here. And then finally, let's look at a larger project, painting an entire house. This is what you might spend in your materials, your paint and all that. And let's say it takes you 2 weeks to do it. Now we're talking. So beyond the cost, there are other factors to consider when deciding whether to DIY or hire a pro. First is your skill level. If you're not a skilled painter, you might end up spending more time and money on things like mistakes. So all those numbers we talked about, in some cases, you might have to double them to sort of compensate. Then of course you have time constraints. Do you actually have the time to complete the project properly yourself? If you do have a full-time job that you can't miss out on, when are you gonna do it? On the weekends? At night? Before work? Those are only small little pockets of time, and to start and stop a painting project is probably the worst idea you can do because it's gonna add a ton of extra prep time and cleanup. Starting and stopping, not great. And then of course, quality. Professional painters often have the experience and the equipment to achieve a higher quality finish. A great company will invest in great equipment, which will give you a great finish, so you don't have to worry about it. And then of course, stress level. DIY painting can be super stressful, especially if you're not confident in your abilities, because we're not machines. Ultimately, the decision of whether to DIY or hire a professional depends on your individual circumstances. If you're a skilled painter with plenty of time, DIY might be the cost-effective option. However, if you're short on time or you lack the skills, hiring a pro might just be the better choice in all situations. Based on my feelings and experiences, as the project gets bigger, that's when DIY becomes much harder to justify. Remember, a well-painted room can add value to your home, so it's important to choose the option that will give you the best results and the least amount of headache. Cheers. Okay, so today we're going to be diving into the fascinating world of color perception and ultimately how it can impact your paint choices. Did you know the same paint color can look completely different in different lighting conditions? I mean, I would hope you would know that because I talk about it all the time. But in this video, I want to dive a little bit deeper in regards to color and light. Let's look at some of the science behind lighting and color and how it's all impacted inside your home. So the first thing I want to talk about is the role of light, the foundation of color perception. Light is the key to understanding how colors appear. It's a form of electromagnetic radiation, not the dangerous kind, don't worry. I just finished Chernobyl, traumatizing. And light actually travels in waves. The wavelengths of light affect how our eyes perceive color. Different light sources, such as natural light coming through your windows from the big old sun, or your incandescent light bulbs that are perhaps a little bit warm, fluorescent lights, and LED lights that are more cool leaning perhaps and give you that almost bluish lighting. All these light sources emit different wavelengths of light, which can significantly impact how your paint colors look. And not just your paint colors, but also your decor, your furniture, your flooring, everything, even your partner. Now, before we get into the different types of light specifically, don't forget to hit that like button and press that subscribe button if you haven't already. The notification bell is there to be pressed if you want to stay up to date with our content, because we release a bunch of videos every week, and we are doing live streams now. Ooh, scary. Okay, so natural light. The first thing we want to talk about is the impact of direction, because this plays a huge role. Natural light tends to be the most balanced feeling light source. Objectively speaking, the sun is always going to produce the same sort of lighting, but the direction your windows face can significantly impact the quality and the intensity of natural light. And this is what often impacts us as paint color people. When we're selecting colors, which direction your room is facing will drastically impact how those colors will appear. For example, north-facing rooms tend to receive indirect sunlight, which is cooler, and they can make colors appear a little more subdued and kind of blue leaning. The opposite is true for south-facing rooms, which receive fairly direct sunlight, and it tends to be warmer leaning and can make colors appear a little more vibrant and cozy. You then have east-facing rooms, which will receive the most light in the morning. And then, of course, west-facing rooms receive afternoon and evening light, which can actually be quite beautiful, intense, and almost warm and golden. Because if you think about it, the most sunlight you're going to be getting is probably around sunset, which is pretty awesome. But will drastically change the look of the colors in the space. One thing I wanted to touch on was the camera's trickery and the limitations of photography and videos. I wanted to talk about this because I'm obviously talking to you via your screen, whether you're watching it on your phone or your computer. Photos or videos of paint colors can be extremely misleading. Cameras capture color differently than the human eye, and depending on the settings of that camera, it can look completely different in person compared to when that picture was taken. The lighting conditions under which the photo was taken can affect how the color appears, and additionally, the settings on your computer screen can further distort color perception. So for example, a photo of a paint swatch taken under natural light might look different than a photo of the same swatch taken under artificial light. And not to get too technical, but the camera you took that picture with could have the white balance settings adjusted, which could also affect how the color appears. And let's not forget things like filters, screen calibration, color profiles, which can vary greatly from device to device. Technology is awesome, but it can also complicate things and distort reality quite regularly. And then you have these things, eyeballs. Our eyes are incredible tools, but they're not perfect color detectors. Factors like obviously vision, age, and even our individual perception can influence how we see colors. What looks like a perfect match to one person might appear slightly off to someone else. Additionally, our eyes can adapt to different lighting conditions. This phenomenon, known as color adaptation, can make it difficult to accurately assess paint colors. For example, if you spend a long time in a room with predominantly red color scheme, for example, poor you, but let's say you're in a photography dark room, your eyes may start to desensitize to red, and perceive it as less intense. It's kind of like this survival response. You're trying to ignore that red. Meaning the same person with the same eyeballs looking at the same color swatch with the same lighting can perceive a color differently depending on the colors they've been looking at before. It's crazy, I know. If you're looking for your own custom palette pyramid from me, check the description down below and press that link whether you need a 3-color palette for a room or a 6 or a 12-color palette for an entire home. We can do that for you. Okay, so what are some tips for choosing paint colors accurately when it comes to lighting? First of all, you gotta test your paint at home. Always get paint swatches and test them out in person in the room where you plan to paint. This will help you see how the color looks in your specific lighting conditions, including the natural light that enters the room and of course the artificial light that you've filled that room with. And also use your eyes. Don't rely on someone else. Next, you want to consider the time of day. The color of a paint swatch can look different in the morning, afternoon, and evening. Make sure to test swatches at different times of the day to get a true sense of the color. And also consider the time of day that you're most likely to use this room. If you're picking a bedroom color, you probably don't want to prioritize how it looks like in the afternoon unless you're working night shifts. Check it throughout the day, but make sure you like it in the morning and at night because that's like the prime time for sleeping. You can also rely on technology. So you can get an accurate assessment of color by using one of those color meters, those devices that measure colors accurately. They can be a little bit expensive, but they're valuable tools for professionals and serious DIYers. I wouldn't necessarily rely on them 100% either, but they're a good tool to have just to give you that added layer of security. And then finally, trust your gut. Ultimately, the best way to choose paint colors is to trust your own eyes and your own instincts. I can give you advice, but it has to be up to you, right? If a color makes you feel happy and comfortable, that's the most important thing. You know, understanding the science behind color perception is essential for choosing those right paint colors for your home. You have to consider the effects of light. And also, don't be tricked by things on Pinterest and things taken on Instagram, because it's all fake. But seriously, we're all so different. We perceive colors differently. So the best way to make informed decisions is just to create a space that looks exactly as you envision it. So test your colors at home. Trust your gut. Hope this helps. Don't forget about lighting. Test your colors. I love you. Did you pick the wrong white paint color? And if you're asking me, and these are for your walls, every white is the wrong choice. I'm just kidding. Honestly, I've been there when I was painting houses on a regular basis, staring at endless swatches, and then finally you pick a white paint color, you put it on the walls, and something kind of feels weird about it, feels off. I get it, I totally do. But fear not, because in this video, I'm gonna equip you with the knowledge to identify a white paint gone wrong, and more importantly, I'll tell you how to fix it. And I'll also just give you some of my favorite white paint colors to use, because I think that's also handy for some people. The dreaded white washout. Here are some red flags to watch out for. Number 1, the room feels cold and sterile and lifeless. This is a classic case of picking a white with too cool of an undertone, usually from gray and of course blue. Anytime you have white paint colors that are cool leaning, they can really dominate a space, especially ones that don't have a lot of natural light, and can make it just feel like, I don't know, hospital vibes, or even like you're in a freezer. Like, it's that bad. Number 2, your walls kind of look dingy and dirty, and this can sometimes happen if you've chosen a white that has a bit of a warm yellow undertone, especially if it's clashing with the existing lighting or your furniture. So if you have that gut feeling where the walls just look a bit kind of muddy, even though they're supposed to be white, perhaps they're a bit too yellow or warm leaning. Number 3, the other colors in the room look kind of off and weird. This can sometimes happen if you use a really bright white or a stark white that is completely void of any colors, and it can make any bolder colors appear that much harsher in your room, or even just darker objects. The contrast will be so severe. Let's talk about understanding undertones. The key to a happy white paint color marriage is understanding what's happening underneath the surface. These are those subtle hints of color that peek through a seemingly pure white. Not every white is created equal. I keep saying that, but it's true. Warmer whites often have that yellow or creamy undertone, and those cooler whites can have that gray or that blue. You really need to be aware of what kind of white you've chosen. And if you're hopeless when it comes to undertones and color, or legally colorblind, which is totally valid, then maybe ask a friend or even the paint professional at your local paint store if they can help identify what kind of white it is. You can even grab a white piece of paper from your printer to give you a bit of control against your white paint color, and that can help determine whether it's leaning a little more warm or cool. And as always, testing is key. Here's the golden rule. Never judge a white by its swatch alone. Even if you have that piece of paper I told you about, it's still not going to be a tried and true method for everyone to determine exactly what kind of color it is. Ultimately, you're just going to have to sample the paint color itself, get a large poster board of some sort, move those boards around the room at different times of day to see how the light affects the color, and do all this before you paint. If you've already made the white paint mistake, then don't make the same mistake twice with your next white paint color. So let's talk about fixing a white mistake. You've identified a white faux pas, but don't despair, because I do have some options for you. Number one, embrace an accent wall. If the white is too bold, consider painting just one wall in the room and pairing it with something maybe a little bit softer, perhaps an off-white or a lighter neutral, just to sort of cut down on the monotony. And that way you only need to paint one wall instead of 4 potentially, and it'll just soften the look a little bit. It'll help bridge the gap between the bright white on your walls and then everything else in the room. Number two is, of course, repaint with a different white. This might be the obvious choice solution, but choose wisely, because you've already seen how difficult white can be, so really consider the factors that led you astray the first time. Number three is keep the walls white and add warmth with furniture and decor. So if your white leans cool, maybe introduce some warm wood tones to help balance things out. You can also add some throw pillows in to help make things feel really cozy. But usually if your problem is the yellowy white wall thing, probably should repaint, based on my experience. Now, some of my current favorite white paint colors to use on the walls from different paint companies include Behr's Blank Canvas, which is a recent color of the year. Love that color. Sherwin-Williams Alabaster, which is just a tried and true classic color. I love it on the walls. Even as a trim color, it's fine. And then for a brighter, maybe a touch less beigey option, Steam by Benjamin Moore would be a great choice for something really clean, stark, and modern. Choosing the perfect white can feel overwhelming, but with a little knowledge and these handy tips, you can banish the wrong white blues forever.
I have a feeling that the design world is about to go dark. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're breaking the rules and embracing the dark side of color. Shaded colors, darkness. We're talking about black and other bold colors in painting and design, especially on the interior side of things. Don't be afraid to add a touch of drama and intrigue to your home. We're gonna get into it in this video, but before we do, please hit that like and subscribe button and that notification bell if you want to stay up to date with all of our videos. So I wanted to start by talking about the power of black. I'm wearing it right now. I have some black walls behind me. I got black acoustic paneling to make the audio nice and crispy in these videos. Oftentimes black is overlooked as a paint color, but it can really be a powerful and versatile choice. I find it to be fairly timeless as a paint color, and it really can add some elegance and sophistication to any space based on the amount of contrast it has with most other colors. There's also a variety of blacks you can go with. You have charcoals, you have more blue leaning blacks, you have more black bean, brown leaning blacks. There's a lot you can do. But ultimately, here's why I think you should consider incorporating black into your home's decor. First of all, the drama of it all. Black can add this sense of mystery and intrigue, making your home feel more sophisticated and classy and inviting. I think black is the epitome of cozy cave vibes because it's as dark as you can get when it comes to paint colors. Even though black is pretty timeless, it can add a modern touch based on how you're using it. I think it's something that feels very contemporary, especially when you use it more heavy-handedly in full rooms or even on trim, like window trims. I see it everywhere these days, which is maybe a bad thing. But black is the antithesis of white, but they do a lot of similar things. They're essentially the purest form of color or the lack thereof, and oftentimes our wall colors are somewhere in the middle. So black and white, they do a great job at contrasting one way or the other. Now, beyond black, we can talk about some bold color combinations. Black and white is a classic pairing, but there are many other bold color combinations utilizing black that can add some drama and excitement to your home. First one I can think of is black and gold. Very glam, very luxurious. This luxurious combination just screams luxury to me. And maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe you're more into quiet luxury, but I think it is kind of a fun pairing and pretty classic. For a more energetic combination, you can go black and red. This is a bold and daring combo that adds energy and excitement. It's a great choice for home offices or entertainment spaces. But I've also seen kitchen cabinets, believe it or not, with like a shaded red and a black. Really moody, very personal, very polarizing, but it looks pretty good if you pull it off and it suits your taste. Another one is black and green. This is a natural, refreshing take on black, and it helps create a sense of calm and tranquility, perfect for bedrooms or bathrooms. You could go full black here, or you can even go for that black bean, dark chocolate brown black as an alternative, just to sort of tie in that nature theme even more. Think of like a topsoil color. And then you have a variation of that, black and teal. This is kind of an unexpected pairing because it creates a unique and eye-catching look. Still has a connection to nature a little bit, but more so towards the coastal, aquatic, and nautical side of things. I do find it to be a great choice for more contemporary spaces. So yeah, black and teal, pretty cool. Now let's talk about other dark colors that maybe aren't black, and that would be jewel tones. So if you're going dark with your paint colors and you don't want just deep, dark jet black, you can go with jewel tones, which are rich and saturated colors to add that glamour, that luxury, that color, that fun to your space. And I find some of my favorite jewel tones to use on the interior side of things would be an emerald green. A deep green creates this elegant vibe, a ruby red or something that has maybe a little bit of a shaded quality, more warm leaning, just passionate and energetic. And you have sapphire blue, which is more of a calming, kind of tranquil feeling color, but still very rich and saturated. And then one I suspect you're going to see a little bit more going into the next year or so, amethyst purple. This is more of a mysterious, interesting color that will create intrigue, not one that feels very predictable. Purple is a color that gets underused, I feel. So I think it's one to definitely consider. And then away from jewel tones, you also have dark neutrals. Don't feel like you need to just go with these bold, crazy, obnoxious options. You can also rethink neutrals by going with those darker, kind of rougey brown colors, the taupes, the slate grays, things of that nature. So muted, but just really deep and saturated. And that might be a good place for a lot of you to start. All right, so here's some tips on how to use black and bold colors in your home. The first one would be to start small. If you're new to this, if you're just used to using pastels and off-whites everywhere, maybe just start with a piece of artwork or furniture, a little bit of decor items, maybe an accent wall, just a little bit here and there. See how you like it, see how you feel. If that becomes the focal point and you're just really drawn to it, maybe you have a thing for these darker colors. So just go for it and then slowly expand outwards as time goes on. You can add more and more of these darker, more rich, colorful elements. This will help you get a feel for how the color looks in your space. It's a bit of a taste test, if anything. Second tip would be to balance with neutrals. Now we talked about those dark neutrals, but I'm also encouraging you to utilize, your whites, beiges, and grays to help balance out the boldness of black, of those jewel tones, of those rich colors. This will create more of a harmonious atmosphere, and it just gives you that sense of scale. And I mean like a Libra scale. It's a good idea to balance things out a little bit, especially if you're just starting out. Number 3 would be to consider the room's function. Bold colors might not be the best choice for something like a bedroom where it can be a little overwhelming, especially the more saturated colors that are a little more vibrant. However, they could be perfect for places like bathrooms, the living room perhaps, home offices for sure, and even a dining room where maybe you're just going to use it for an hour a day and you can just kind of bask in this really cool color. But personally, I do like those darker colors in bedrooms, so it just depends on your personal preference. And then of course, don't be afraid to experiment. Have fun. Experiment with different color combinations to find what works best for you. There's no right or wrong answer when it comes to color and home decor. And that doesn't mean you experiment by throwing paint on the wall willy-nilly. Sample, take the color chips home, see how you feel, bring in some colorful throw pillows and see how the colors interact with everything else in your space. And then if you want to commit to painting, then go for it. Don't be afraid to embrace the dark side of color. Black and bold colors alike can add a unique and dramatic touch to your home, and with a little creativity and some experimentation and maybe a bit of vino, don't drink and paint, you can create a space that is both stylish and inviting. We'll see you on the next video.
This video is going to be your ultimate guide to mood painting. Painting with your feelings, essentially. Helping you choose colors that create the desired atmosphere in your home. Because color is a very, very powerful thing. The study of color psychology dates back centuries. Ancient cultures believed that colors had the power to heal and influence people. And today, modern science has confirmed that colors can indeed affect our mood and our behavior. So it's something that you really need to consider when you're painting. While there is some variance from culture to culture, generally speaking, colors that boost energy and excitement would be red, which is a bold, super energetic, stimulating color that just boosts your mood and it's evocative of passion. It's often used in sports and marketing and branding, and even on YouTube, Their logo is red. It's very eye-catching. Orange is another color which is a little warmer. It can kind of feel a little more playful than red because it does have that zingy yellow undertone. I just find orange to be a very happy and enthusiastic choice. And as a paint color, I think it could be a really interesting choice anywhere you want to feel lively and inviting. And then of course you have yellow, which is a very cheerful, sunny color that can brighten your mood and increase your energy levels. Often used in places like schools and offices because the vibrancy of yellow and that energy that it brings is extremely conducive to productivity and creativity. A lot of these bright colors are. So thinking practically, anywhere you want to feel passionate, playful, or productive, red, orange, and yellow are great choices. And you don't need to go with the primary color versions of these in their purest form. You can implement them as undertones, as softer variations of themselves to give you a little more of a practical use case in your home. Now, what about the other side of the coin? Colors that promote calm and relaxation. The first one, which is the obvious choice, would be blue. A calming and soothing color that can actually reduce stress and anxiety levels. Often used in bedrooms. I have a blue in my bedroom actually. And also bathrooms to create a little bit of a spa-like peaceful, relaxing atmosphere. Blue's great because you can go navy blue. You can also go sky blue. Either way, they're going to feel very calming in their own different ways. One of my personal favorites would be green, which is a color associated with growth, tranquility, but also nature, which is awesome. Green can really help promote feelings of peace. While blue is almost sleepy as a color to me, green just promotes conscious, peaceful vibes. Like I'm one with nature, I'm taking it all in, but I'm relaxed. Like a little bit of a different feel. There is a little more energy behind green. I find it to still be a great choice in things like bedrooms, but also living rooms, anywhere you want to create that calming and rejuvenating space. So maybe not the best wind down color. I would probably still give that to blue. There's a little more nuance with green that I think is interesting. Another one would be purple, which is a color that isn't used very often, but I find it to be very luxurious, very moody, regal. It can evoke feelings of serenity and also a connection to spirituality. It's often used in places like spas and meditation rooms to create that tranquil feeling to it, maybe even more so than green. Depending on which purple you go with, I can see this being both an accent color that really pops and is more energetic, or something closer to a dark blue where it's very much just chill out zone kind of color. Now let's explore some other options that aren't as obvious to inspire creativity and imagination. The first one being pink, which is essentially very, very, very light red. It's a very gentle, fun color that can just spark a lot of imagination. It's traditionally used in places like nurseries and children's rooms to create this sort of playful atmosphere. But I think you can get away with using pink in other areas, especially the ones that are a little more grayed out, light, peachy. If you're not a kid, but you're a kid at heart, I think this is a color to consider. Another good choice would be sage green specifically, because similar to like a dusty pink, there is that like grayed out aesthetic that just makes it a little softer and easier to handle for a lot of people. But because it's green, it straddles the line of warm and cool, so I think it has a ton of versatility, and it's one of my favorite colors to surround myself with if I'm trying to do any creative work. So unlike the sort of pink colors which are more playful and energetic, sage green helps me feel grounded and focused when I'm trying to do my creative work. So when choosing paint colors for your home, really consider the desired mood or atmosphere you want to create. For example, if you're looking to create a relaxing bedroom, you might choose those shades of deep blue or green, but if you wanted a stimulating office space, consider using those more fun, uplifting colors, the reds, the oranges, the pinks, and the sage greens. However, remember that personal preference always plays a role, so ultimately the best color for your space is the one that makes you feel happy and comfortable. And we're all different, we're all beautiful, we're all unique. A couple additional tips before I let you go. Consider the natural light. The amount of light in your room can really affect how colors appear, so darker colors might be more suitable in rooms with plenty of natural light to help brighten them up, while lighter colors can help brighten up those darker spaces by reflecting more light back into the room. Also, I'm a Libra. I like balance, so avoid using too many bold or bright colors in a single space, as this can be very overwhelming. Create a balanced look by using maybe a neutral base color and then adding those little pops of color and accents like pillows and artwork and rugs, but also experiment and have fun. Don't be afraid to try different colors and combinations. The best way to find the perfect color palette in your home is to try different options. See what you like, see what works best for you. So hopefully I've equipped you with the knowledge to create a home for yourself that not only looks beautiful, but also feels good, promotes positive emotions and well-being.
Looking to paint, but not willing to spend a ton of money? Well, that's what today's video is all about. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I'm James from the Paint People. Today we're tackling a common home improvement challenge, painting on a budget. Who says you need to break the bank to transform your space, right? Obviously, there are some considerable expenses when it comes to painting, especially if you're getting it done professionally. But if you are willing to tackle it on your own, I think you can save some cash. So let's explore some little hacks and affordable paint alternatives to help you achieve a beautiful and budget-friendly paint job. That's what today's about. Number one, sample swatch savings. Test before you invest. Before committing to a gallon of paint, grab some free paint swatches from your local hardware store. Test them on a small area of your wall to see how the colors look in your space and under different lighting conditions. This is a huge point that I try and reinforce all the time. You really will save yourself a ton of money if you don't need to repaint colors that you don't like. And by testing them first, getting those little swatches, bringing them home, there's no commitment, right? They're free usually. They're just given out by the paint stores. You can see how they look in your home to give you a much better idea of whether it's gonna work for you. That's my number one tip. Secondly, comes to the materials you use. Instead of investing in professional grade canvas drop cloths, DIY them. If you have any old sheets or blankets, reuse them. You can repurpose those old sheets, or, I wouldn't recommend newspapers because that could be a bit of a tripping hazard, but you get the idea. Probably have old towels or cloths or anything that you can use that can help catch any potential drips and spills where you don't need to go and invest a ton of money in professional equipment that maybe you won't even use after this one project. So yes, blankets, sheets, DIY drop cloths. Big fan. My third tip is wash up. Clean yourself. But most importantly, clean your tools. Clean your roller cage. A clean roller cage ensures smooth application, prevents streaks. It means you're just gonna have a better process. I would always wash the roller cage with warm soapy water after each use, and especially reusing and washing roller sleeves. If you invest a little bit more on a good roller sleeve that can be re-washed and reused, assuming it's still in good condition, you can totally use it for a number of different projects just by cleaning it thoroughly. Those sleeves can add up if you keep rebuying them every time you open up a new can of paint. And then of course, clean your brushes thoroughly as well. And I prefer to do it with cooler or room temperature water rather than really hot water, because I feel like the bristles, they don't really take well to really hot, piping hot water. And if you are using a paintbrush and you're doing your cutting in and all that, try and prevent the paint from saturating all the way to the ends of the bristle where it's starting to go into the metal, because that can deteriorate your brush a little bit more. Try and keep, as best as you can, a little gap of dry bristle, or at least not saturated with paint bristle. And this doesn't just go for the end of the project. I would even consider cleaning your brushes throughout the project to preserve them, to prevent, that oversaturation and that deterioration. Starting a paint project, you don't need to go to a paint store. Just go to thepaintpeople.com, our shop for all things painting and decorating. Whether you need some supplies or a couple gallons of paint, thepaintpeople.com offers fast shipping and great service to get you started with your painting project pronto. Number 4, affordable paint alternatives. The first one I could recommend is going to be obviously your lower grade paint. At least your contractor grade paint. This is something that I have a lot of experience with using. Can be trickier to work with in some cases, but it is going to give you good value for money. And you may need to have a contractor account to get this paint, or at least get, a good price on it. It is something that is worth considering. It's going to be a more affordable paint altogether. Just be mindful that with those lower grade paints, coverage can sometimes be a concern, and also durability sometimes. Higher end paints tend to last a bit longer, generally speaking, across the board. But if you are looking to save money, you can go with those lower line paints rather than going straight to the top of the line. And I'm also a bit of a brand fanboy. And I find, for me at least, it's better to go with a reputable brand's more budget line compared to a cheap brand's or a non-reputable paint brand's kind of middle line. That's just me though. Number 5, the main feature. This is a fun one. What if there was a way to remove 3/4 of your paint costs and still have a nice little transformation in your home? Accent walls. Instead of painting 4 walls, You can paint one. Maybe you don't need to repaint the entire room. Maybe you have a nice neutral color that works. But by painting one wall panel, a single accent wall, with a quarter of the paint, you can really transform the space in a nice, interesting way with way less effort and way less cost. And the best part is, if you do decide to repaint in a couple years, you can just choose to repaint that one wall again and have a very, very different look. Whether you want to go much darker, more saturated, or lighter, whatever the case may be, consider an accent wall. Literally eliminate 3/4 of the work. Number 6, save on tape. Now, I understand a lot of you watching are more beginners when it comes to painting, more of the DIY crowd. A big money saver is just getting good. Get good at painting. Easier said than done. But honestly, I encourage you, practice. Check out the countless number of tutorials on YouTube on painting techniques. Practice, practice, practice so you don't need to rely on tape. And honestly, whenever I'm working with newer painters that are learning to cut in with a brush, oftentimes they'll be pretty good at getting a straight line fairly quickly. The real skill is getting a straight line and also working at pace. But if you're doing it on your own and you're taking the time to be really careful with everything, I truly believe you don't need to rely on the tape, because then it just establishes bad habits. If you have the patience to really give it a go, you will naturally save lots and lots of money. Because ultimately, painting your home, it doesn't need to be as expensive as you think. By using these creative hacks and affordable alternatives, you can achieve a beautiful and budget-friendly paint job.
Choosing the right sheen can be as important as picking the perfect paint color. But don't worry, paint enthusiasts, because by the end of this video, you'll be a finish fanatic. Someone who's a big fan of Finland. Let's get into the sheen lowdown. Paint finishes, also known as sheens, they determine how light reflects or interacts off of a painted surface. And here's the breakdown of the main players. This can vary from company to company, but the majority of paint finishes are probably going to fall into some of these categories. Today's sponsor is us. ThePaintPeople.com is your go-to destination for quality paint and paint supplies. We're more than just a paint store. We are your partner in bringing color to life. Visit our website today and discover a world of colors, quality, and convenience. And as a thank you for supporting us on YouTube, use coupon code JAMES5 for 5% off your order. First one is flat or matte. This superstar offers a very low or even zero shine velvety look, and it's perfect for hiding imperfections on walls and, more importantly, ceilings, but can sometimes be trickier to clean. The next step up would be low luster or low sheen eggshell. This is going to be a paint finish that's just a touch shinier than a flat, and I normally see it in exterior products for whatever reason. Then we have an eggshell finish, which a lot of people are familiar with already. It's a touch glossier than that low luster, a lot glossier than flat. Eggshell offers a very soft, subtle sheen. It's extremely delicate, kind of like the eggshell it's named after. It's a good compromise between hiding imperfections, but also being somewhat washable, which I think is very important, especially in your higher traffic areas. Then we have pearl. This versatile finish offers a beautiful pearl-like sheen. It's both reasonably durable and hides really minor imperfections. The sheen will be noticeable enough that if you have pretty big dents in your wall, it's going to reflect a little bit. But I find pearl to be great for interior walls that really need that extra washability. Typically, historically, I've seen it used a lot in bathrooms and sometimes kitchens. But now that eggshell and matte finishes are getting pretty good and pretty washable in those more premium products, I tend to see pearl being more so used as maybe a bathroom ceiling paint or sometimes a trim paint for those light duty doors or baseboards in rooms that don't really get touched too much. The finish that I probably prefer to pearl is satin, which is just a touch shinier. It has a little more shimmer to it. Satin really adds a touch of elegance to trim because it's not as shiny as the next one we're going to talk about, but still has a pretty solid amount of durability. Not every product is going to have a satin finish. Usually it goes straight to semi-gloss, which is our next one. And this is going to be the hardworking go-to finish with higher shine, great washability, probably the #1 choice for a lot of people as a trim and door finish. Of all the finishes we've talked about, it's going to withstand the most abuse, great for high traffic areas. Sometimes people use it on walls, but I normally don't recommend it. I think it just has too much of a sheen. The only walls that I would see myself using semi-gloss would probably be exterior walls. Still a perfect choice as a trim and door finish. And then you have gloss or even high gloss. High gloss can look mirror-like. It's extremely reflective, making it really ideal for those high-end finishings on cabinets and I guess doors as well, where cleaning is paramount. Because you're having so much shine, however, make sure that whatever surface or substrate you're using it on is very pristine and clean, or you're going to see every single little imperfection. highlighted. I want to get into some numbers here. I want to demystify sheen percentages, because if you've looked into finishes and sheens, you might have seen numbers associated with sheen levels like 50% sheen or 20 to 30% sheen for eggshell, let's say. These numbers simply represent the amount of light that's being reflected by the coating. So here's a general guideline of what you can expect. Depending on the company, flat or matte usually has like a 0 to 10% sheen. Low luster could be around 10 to 15%. And then your medium sheens like your eggshells, satin, and pearls can kind of range from 11 to 30%. Your higher sheen semi-glosses can be around 31 all the way up to like 75. And then your high sheens, your high glosses, 75 to 100, let's say. So there is quite a range. Different companies use different standards of measurement. Not only will companies have varying levels of sheen percentage for their respective products, they'll also have different standards of measurement usually. So not only will you have a percentage most of the time, you'll also have a degree. So if that 15% sheen paint had a 60 degree next to it, it means it was measured when observing that coating at a 60 degree angle. In some cases, companies use 85 degrees as a standard, but I think the most important thing is judge apples to apples. When you are comparing different finish percentages, make sure they're all the same degree at which they were measured. Let's talk about location, interior versus exterior finishes. While some finishes excel indoors, others are weather warriors. So on the interior side of things, washability and hiding imperfections are often preferred. So things like flat and matte, to a lesser degree eggshell these days, those are going to be popular choices for walls and ceilings. Semi-gloss is still probably the most popular trim finish, but I have been seeing a lot more people using satin and pearl, and in some cases eggshell, depending on how good the paint is. Exterior side of things, durability and weather resistance is absolutely crucial. You don't really care about hiding imperfections on the side of your house. You just want the color to last and look good. So I would typically opt for higher sheen finishes like semi-gloss, sometimes called soft gloss as well, as kind of a go-to choice. But if you are going with a premium product, I don't see the problem with going with low luster or even flat, as long as it's certified to be really, really durable and washable. It all depends on the product that you use. But honestly, the best way to choose a finish is just to see it in action. So get samples and paint them on poster boards in different areas of your home to see how the light interacts with them. Unfortunately, with tester pots that you buy at the paint store, they usually come in one finish only. Hopefully your local paint store can give you samples to take home of the finishes themselves, usually on a swatch card. I find those to be super helpful. And here's a bonus tip. Consider the function of the room. How often are you using this room? What kind of things are you doing in the room? High traffic areas like kitchens and hallways, and even bathrooms where people are coming and going, they benefit from those finishes that are easier to clean, like eggshell or even pearl or satin in some cases. And then areas like bedrooms or offices or even a living room that you just look at, you can definitely afford to go with a softer sheen like flat, matte, and then eggshell, just to make sure you're getting an aesthetically pleasing finish that's going to be very forgiving for those minor imperfections in the wall. And another tip, when you're picking a wall color and a trim color, consider contrast in your sheen. So if you want flat walls, skip eggshell and then go straight to pearl or satin on that trim. And if you have eggshell walls, skip pearl and satin and go for a semi-gloss on the trim. I tend to enjoy that combination where you skip a finish for your trim and your walls. I hope this video has empowered you to conquer the world of paint finishes. It can be a bit tricky and intimidating, but now I bet you feel like a paint finish pro. Do me a favor and share your go-to sheens on your projects in the comment section below. And don't forget to like and subscribe on this video, and I'll catch you in the next one, y'all.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving in to the world of color and color harmony. I'm gonna teach you how colors work together to really transform your home's decor from bland to brilliant. And in this video, we're gonna explore the art of complementary and analogous or adjacent colors. And most importantly, I'll tell you how to use them to create stunning color palettes in your home. Some practical tips as well. And before we get into it, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe buttons and press that notification bell if you wanna stay up to date with all of our videos. So this thing is called the color wheel. This is your guide to harmony. The color wheel is an extremely valuable tool for understanding color relationships, one that I use every single day, and I even got a pin with a color wheel on it that is interactive. Got it on Amazon. Essentially, it's a circular arrangement of colors. You have your primary colors in red, yellow, and blue. Then you have your secondary colors in between them, orange, green, and purple. And then there's the tertiary colors, which are actually combinations of primary and secondary colors, just to give you even more granular control on your color defining. So now that we know what the colors are, let's talk about how they are paired together traditionally. So the first pairing is the dynamic duo of complementary colors. And those are the colors that sit opposite each other on the color wheel. They create a very bold and vibrant contrast. It essentially doesn't get more contrasty than this, which is nice because it's dynamic and exciting, but it can also be a little overbearing in some cases, so you just want to pick and choose where you use these colors. Some examples include the classic red and green Christmas color pairing. You have blue and orange, which is another great one, and then of course you have yellow and purple. You might notice some of these color schemes in things like sports as well, because those are the type of logos that maybe want some eye-catching complementary color pairings. So you can use these complementary colors to add a pop of energy and excitement to your space. However, it is important to use them in moderation to avoid overwhelming the room. So you might not even want to really focus on a complementary paint color pairing. Maybe you just have a couple of pillows that are opposite on the color wheel just to give you a bit of a relationship there. Or if you want to use one of the colors a lot more, make sure you use the other one just a little bit, like an 80-20 sort of ratio. Moving on to analogous colors, which is the harmonious trio. Analogous colors are those that are adjacent to each other on the color wheel. Essentially, they're neighbors. You got 3 in a row, which help create a more calm and harmonious atmosphere. So you can kind of think of this as the opposite of complementary colors, because instead of going all the way across, you're just going side to side, next door. So something like purple, pink, and red, orange, and yellow, things like that. Analogous colors can be used to create a more soothing, cohesive look in your home. They're a great choice for bedrooms, living rooms, and other spaces you want to create a relaxed atmosphere and ambiance. And I do find that it is easier for someone to put together an adjacent color scheme on their own versus going more complementary. By nature, it's going to be more passive feeling and chilled out. So you're not really as much at risk of going a little too overboard with your complementary colors, for example. I would say analogous color schemes are pretty beginner friendly.
Do you want your own custom palette pyramid? Well, we offer it as a service. Link in the description down below if you want to get a custom 3, 6, or 12 color palette from me delivered to you. Check it out.
A semi-hybrid between the two would be split complementary colors, which is a more balanced complementary approach. And the way this works is essentially you choose a base color, and then what you do is you select 2 colors that are next to its complement. So essentially you're creating a really skinny triangle. And what this does is it takes your complementary pairing at its core and then just softens it ever so slightly by using its neighbors rather than the complementary color itself. Split complementary colors can add some complexity and sophistication to your color palette, and while they aren't quite as dynamic as complementary pairings, they do give you a similar effect, but it just feels a little more interesting. Let's talk about triadic colors, which is the bold trio. And this is essentially an equilateral triangle on the color wheel. Triadic colors are 3 colors that are evenly spaced on the color wheel, and they really create a vibrant and energetic atmosphere. What's great about triadic color schemes is they aren't very predictable. They're not exactly complementary, but I do find this to be probably the most exciting and dynamic color scheme of the bunch, but it's one I rarely tend to use in residential kind of color schemes because it's very dynamic. I mean, if you think of the primary colors themselves, red, yellow, and blue, that's a triadic pairing, and it would look really, really Lego-y if you were to use that in your home. I just think of Fisher-Price toys, like that kind of thing. Orange, green, and purple is another one. So you can just see that when these colors are implemented, it can be a very big statement that you're making, which could be useful in some circumstances, but I would more so see this in more the commercial sector, in workspaces, not necessarily at home. So tread softly with triadic colors. And then probably the most passive of the bunch would be monochromatic colors, which is a timeless classic, another pretty easy to implement color scheme. And when you hear the word monochromatic, some of you might think grayscale, so just everything's gray. But really, it just means one chroma, one color of different shades of the same hue. Essentially, you start with blue, and then maybe you have a light blue, a dark blue, a more shaded blue, a more tinted, kind of milky, creamy blue, different levels of saturation and intensity. And similar to analogous colors, I find monochromatic color palettes to be very calming and just classy, but they can also be used to create a dramatic and visually striking effect if you are leaning into those more saturated, punchy versions of whatever color you decide. So there's a lot of customization you can do, even though you're just really using one color. And of course, there could be other colors in the room. Like, you don't have to paint your floors blue either in this example, but the predominant hue that's being used would be that one. So here's some tips on using color harmony in your home. Start with a neutral base. A neutral base like your grays, your beiges, your whites. It can provide a foundation for your color palette. So you're not having to focus on filling in all the gaps. The base is there, and then you can add on top of it with whatever color scheme you're going with. Second one is, of course, use accents.
It's a strawberry.
You can introduce these pops of color with accents like pillows, artwork, rugs, little decor pieces. You don't even need to worry about paint necessarily. You can kind of bring these colors in the form of other objects, which is really nice to change them in and out when you get sick of whatever colors you're going with. Next, you got to consider the room's function. Different colors can evoke different moods. So those calming colors like your blues and your greens and maybe your purples are great in bedrooms and bathrooms, while your more energetic colors like red and orange and maybe even yellow are great for playrooms and maybe living rooms, places that you want to have fun and you just kind of want to be a little more lively. And of course, experiment and have fun. The best way to find the perfect color palette for your home is to experiment and see what works for you. Understanding this concept of color harmony and putting colors together, it can really transform your home. By mastering complementary, analogous, split complementary, triadic, and monochromatic colors, you can create a stunning and visually appealing space. Remember, the key is to find a balance that reflects your personal style and creates a home that you really enjoy. And I'll see ya on the next video. Hi guys and girls. Hello everyone. Hi. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I'm James, the color guy, paintpeople.com, all that good stuff. But today I wanted to dive into a classic design dilemma, wallpaper versus paint. What are we gonna do, y'all? Which one is the better choice for your home? So I wanted to weigh some of the pros and cons and ultimately the cost of each one. So just to give you some context, there is a bit of confusion when it comes to wallpaper, so hopefully I'm here to inspire and also inform, because there's a lot. So starting with cost comparison, paint is generally more affordable up front. The thing about wallpaper though is it can offer some long-term cost savings because you're less likely to change your wallpaper. With paint, you're tempted to just repaint if you don't like it, but wallpaper, it's kind of a tedious process, so you pick something typically as an accent that looks great and you live with it for quite a while. It also has a novelty factor to it, I find. High quality wallpaper can really add value to your home, potentially increasing its just resale value. And I found that wallpaper, when done right, can add value to your home, potentially increasing its resale value. Like a really tastefully done wallpaper accent wall just pops. Like, it looks quite nice. And another benefit that not a lot of people consider is wallpaper can do a great job at hiding imperfections on walls, saving you money on costly repairs. So if you have like kind of a beat up looking wall and you really don't want to go through the process of skim coating it, replacing the drywall, as long as it's level, wallpaper does a pretty good job at instantly just covering all that stuff up. But that being said, wallpaper can be more expensive to install, especially if you opt for those really complex patterns or custom designs that are kind of annoying to line up. For most people, I would recommend professional installation, which obviously can have higher costs. Those costs can vary pretty widely, so it's important to get multiple quotes if you are going down that route and you just want to get a professional to do it for you. There are of course more DIY friendly wallpapers out there that are more just peel and stick, and you know, your mileage will vary, but that's an option as well. Now, in terms of design flexibility, I find wallpaper offers a much wider range of patterns, textures, and colors than paint. This allows you to create a truly unique look, and it's something that's personal to you, rather than just going with one simple color or maybe a faux finish here or there. Wallpaper can give you bold geometric designs, delicate floral patterns, even Versace stuff, which is kind of fun. There's a wallpaper style to suit every single taste. Paint, while limited in patterns and textures, it does offer a vast array of colors. So you can easily create a custom color palette to match your home's decor. It's just a much simpler process because you're picking a color rather than colors within a design. Starting a paint project? You don't need to go to a paint store. Just go to thepaintpeople.com, our shop for all things painting and decorating. Whether you need some supplies or a couple gallons of paint, thepaintpeople.com offers fast shipping and great service to get you started with your painting project pronto. Durability. High quality wallpaper can actually be incredibly durable, resistant to scratching, scuffing, and fading. So that's a big plus. However, if your wallpaper does get damaged, it can be much more difficult to repair or remove. So it's kind of that risk versus reward thing, right? It's durable until it isn't, and then it's a disaster. Paint is generally much easier to repair. If you get a little ding, just put some spackle on that, sand it, and then paint it. If the wall was painted fairly recently, you could probably get away with a little touch-up, like with a little small roller. Or if it's been a year or so, you might have to go corner to corner, but that's still much easier than fiddling around with wallpaper. And the best part about paint is if you don't like it anymore, if you want to change it up, you just repaint. You paint over it. You don't have to remove the wallpaper, clean the walls, make sure it's nice and smooth again, and then reapply it again. With wallpaper, it is a hassle to take off, let me tell you. So the installation time and the effort involved. Installing wallpaper can be time consuming and pretty labor intensive, especially if you're going with those non-pasted wallpapers and you gotta paste it yourself, which I find that is still the industry standard, even with the peel and stick stuff. And it does often require professional installation, or at least a very confident DIY person, like super confident. Painting, on the other hand, generally is a faster and easier process, making it a good option for those DIY people watching. However, the time it takes to paint a room will depend on the size of the space and the complexity of the project. Now, what about environmental impact? Both wallpaper and paint can have environmental implications. To some people, this is a really big deal, so I want to go over it. Some wallpapers contain harmful chemicals, so it's important to choose an eco-friendly option. And I find with paint, there's just a ton of low VOC paints out there, which make them a much healthier choice for both you and the environment. You can even get zero VOC paint, which technically isn't zero, but it's like 0.001 or something. What about personal style and preference? I think this is big. Ultimately, the best choice between wallpaper and paint depends on your personal preference. So consider the overall look you're trying to achieve, your budget, and then of course your DIY skills. I personally love wallpaper in smaller doses, accent walls almost exclusively. So here are some examples of how you can do wallpaper. If you are someone that is intrigued, but maybe you don't know how to implement it in your home, check these out. So the first one is a modern minimalism approach. A clean white paint job can create a minimalist and modern look, and then you have this beautiful wallpaper accent wall. Vintage chic you can also do, which is a vintage pattern to add a touch of nostalgia and charm. Or maybe you're living in your grandparents' home and they already have that. So then you can milk that grand millennial vibe all you want. And then of course you can go bold and dramatic. A dark textured wallpaper can create this dramatic eye-catching statement. Or you can go classic elegance and just lean into neutrals, like have a nice warm beigey paint color with subtle trim details, and then a more gentle wallpaper to go alongside it. Now before I let you go, I gotta just give you my personal advice, just away from all the things we talked about. The thing about wallpaper, and I know this working at the paint store, is oftentimes, probably 95% of the time, they're sold as double rolls. Now, why this is important is you're often given the price in single rolls, but then you're forced to buy it in doubles. And why this is an issue for a lot of people is, let's say you're doing a small washroom accent wall. Just one little tiny wall panel. You need about 30 to 40 square feet. Well, great. You find a beautiful wallpaper. It's the perfect choice. A single roll is 50 square feet. Great, you have some extra. Unfortunately, that 50 square foot single roll doesn't exist. You got to get the double roll. So that's a cost not a lot of people take into consideration. This can become especially annoying if you're right on the cusp of a double roll. Maybe you need 100 square feet. Maybe you need 105 square feet. Well, guess what? You got to get 200 square feet worth of stuff. If you are looking into wallpaper, be clear about what you're getting, what you're paying for. Some places will be a bit tricky when it comes to that. Now, I talked to someone who works for a very prominent wallpaper company, and he gave me some insight as to why this happens. Essentially, back in the old days, paint stores and wallpaper stores, they would buy wallpaper in bulk. They would essentially order these double rolls, and the stores themselves would cut these double rolls to size for the customers. That doesn't happen anymore. So now it's unfortunately on the customer to buy in bulk, get the double rolls, and then just deal with it. Bit of a double roll rant. I had to get that in there. Ultimately, whether you choose wallpaper or paint, the most important thing is to select something that reflects your personal style and whatever makes you happy. Both options, they do have their advantages and their disadvantages, so you just gotta weigh the pros and cons carefully and don't make the wrong decision. But I have absolute faith in you. Enjoy designing, take care, and I'll see you on the next one.